Welcome back to MMA Unhinged. Joining me is the monster, Kyle Nelson. Kyle, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.
I'm going to jump right into it. We're just about 2 weeks out from your last bout with Fernando. Given some of the cuts and stuff that you had visually, obviously, how are you feeling otherwise?
I feel great. Yeah, like I had a little cut under my eye, got a couple stitches, and then a cut on the bridge of my nose. But I mean that stuff's like we got the stitches out. It's all healing up really good. So I'm back to running and training and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk quickly about that. For people that don't know, who haven't gotten into a fight or don't have the experience getting into a fight and having some injuries, whether it's minor or it's major, what obviously nobody likes to get hurt, but what would you say is probably the worst injury that you can get, or the worst minor injury you could receive?
The worst minor injury. I'm not sure. Like probably something to do with like your ankle or your foot. Like sometimes just kicking stuff. Sometimes you'll hit an elbow or something, and like it doesn't actually break or tear anything. But you need your feet to run. To even when you're boxing and stuff, you use your feet a lot. So sometimes you can get little injuries like that aren't serious, but they're definitely nagging and they can slow down your training.
And what do you do in that moment to adjust with your training when you get little minor injuries like that?
So yeah, something like that. Say it was your ankle or maybe you broke like a toe. And again, like breaking a toe is not a big deal, but again, it's going to make moving around a little bit more difficult. So we would wear something like a wrestling shoe. You'd put on maybe like a compression sock or something like that, or like a compression sleeve for your ankle, or again wrestling shoes for your toes and stuff. And that way you're able to kind of move around, not have to worry so much about kind of re-injuring or making the injury worse.
And for like the casuals out there that maybe have watched one fight and they might see like a fighter wearing a knee brace or maybe an ankle brace, would you say that's a good indication that there's something that they're dealing with that they didn't want to pull out of the fight?
It's hard to say. I know some guys that just always wear a knee brace or an ankle brace, and like they've just worn it their whole career. So I mean, sure, there's some people that just have like a bad knee or whatever like that, but I've never noticed too many guys in fights with a knee brace or an ankle brace really favor that foot of the knee. But I know sometimes if you got like a bad left knee, some people put a knee brace on their right knee, and that way it takes the attention off the actual injury. So I'm sure some play mind games like that as well.
Of course, of course. Yeah, that would make sense. Now I do want to actually jump right into your last bout here. Great win against Fernando. I don't know if you rewatched the fight, listening to the commentary, but they were really respecting the kicks that you were throwing. But I mean, one thing that really stood out was your defense as well. And about those kicks, though, was that something that you were implementing in that fight? Was that part of the game plan, considering you're facing someone like a boxer?
Yeah, definitely. I knew again Fernando's, and he's super tall too for featherweight. He's 6'1.5". So I knew his arms were obviously gonna be a lot longer than mine, and I think even for his height, his arms are long for his height. I think his reach is like 76 inches. So I knew that was going to be a different obstacle. So again, I'm pretty good with like a long jab and stuff like that, and being long myself. But I knew I was going to have to implement the kicks, not only because he's more of a boxer, but also because of his length.
And speaking about the kicks, it would appear that it would seem like everyone's starting to discover that calf kick. It's no secret that a lot of fighters are now using it versus maybe even 5, 10 years ago. But now that everyone is very aware of how effective it is, no matter how tough you can be. That being said, is it kind of bittersweet that it's another option for you, especially with someone that I know you're a wrestler, but you're very well you kick very well. Is it bittersweet that you have that option, but also your opponent also that's another weapon that you have to kind of worry about, or does that phase you at all?
It's something that I definitely thought about, especially when I first started using, the calf kick. It started working really well for me against Jai Herbert, and So I knew how well it could work offensively, but I hadn't really been hit with it too much, defensively to see, I guess really how much it would affect me in a fight. But in my fight against Do Ho Choi, he was able to land a few calf kicks, and so I got to kind of work through, what it felt like and what that, was like defensively. And I didn't find it too bad. Again, you'll kind of take the kick. Sometimes you're depending on where they land the kick, because again, there's like nerves and stuff in your calf that you can hit if you know how to target them. So he was able to touch that, I think, once on me, and I did feel like my leg and my foot go numb. But I wasn't like, I didn't find too much problem with the pain or anything. I felt like I could kind of power through a lot of it. And then I feel like the defense for the calf kick, as long as you're good at Muay Thai, you're able to start checking them and stuff. It's just kind of a bigger check than a thigh kick, because thigh kick you can kind of just turn it out a little bit, whereas I find the calf kick, people cut little angles to get to the calf, so you just need to check a little bit more.
Hmm. And I know I know I've been praising you about your kicks, but is that something that you've been working on with the last few camps, given your credentials as a primary wrestler?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're always looking to improve on my striking and my wrestling and my jiu-jitsu. But these last couple fights have given me the opportunity to really showcase my striking. So I kind of ran with it.
And do you feel like it's important that a fighter, as much as you might have a strength in certain area, but do you feel it's important to kind of have that second weapon that you're known for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up with George St. Pierre as one of my favorite fighters, and that was something he was great at, like his fight IQ and his ability to use what he was good at striking against wrestlers, and when he was against strikers, he could use his wrestling dominance and stuff. So to be able to implement stuff like that is what's going to take you to that higher level in the UFC.
100%. And you know what? 3 months ago, you and your fellow Canadians, a lot of them were on that card in Vancouver. You were the heroes that night. But then this time around, 2 weeks ago, you were on Mexican Independence Day in Vegas. So what was it like to kind of play the villain? And is that something that you kind of do you enjoy actually?
I mean, I definitely prefer fighting at home here in Canada and being the I guess the hero. But
Mhm.
it's cool as well to travel and get to travel to other people's kind of hometowns. Like when I fought in Mexico or in the UK. So I do enjoy the traveling aspect of it. But yeah, it is a different feeling, when you walk out in front of a Canadian crowd and everybody's cheering for you versus walking out even at the ceremonial weigh-ins for the my last fight. It was all like Vegas was filled with Mexicans that were there for Noche UFC and to support their next Mexican fans. It was they had like the band, like the mariachi band and stuff, and so I mean it was all super cool to experience. But I mean, I would definitely prefer if they were cheering for me as opposed to booing.
And does the booing really bother you at all? It didn't seem to phase you in your post-fight interview.
No, no, like I said, I've fought all over the place, and I've generally always been the away guy because even where I'm from in Canada, in Huntsville, I never fought, for in Huntsville. It was always, I'd go down to Toronto and fight somebody in Toronto, or I'd go to Quebec and fight someone in Quebec. So I'm generally always the away guy. So it's definitely something I'm used to.
And do you think, as a fighter, someone who is fighting at the top of their game in an organization, especially like UFC, do you feel it's important as any kind of fighter, you can't let the crowd intimidate, or you can't let the crowd kind of affect you in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were, paying too much attention or kind of feeding off the negative energy, then yeah, I mean, it could definitely, hinder your performance. So it's something I think I do really well at kind of shutting out the negative energy, and then when I do have the positive energy from my fans or from the Canadians and stuff like that, I find I'm able to kind of absorb that and use it.
And speaking in which, back home, when it comes to MMA Canada, it seems like the country's so big, but the MMA, like with the fighters and the community, is so small and tight knit. I like to kind of call it, especially with the Ontario pocket that we're from. It seems like there's so much talent coming from Ontario, but it seems like everyone knows each other. But it's such a big country. Would you kind of concur with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the UFC, there's like maybe like 15 Canadians. Like there isn't a ton of UFC fighters from Canada in the UFC. And like from my gym alone, we got myself, Deanna Belbitsa, Mike Ballot. We got Jazz Divisius, who's like 20 minutes away that we get to train with a lot. So in that small little pocket, and we got Malcolm Gordon over in Toronto. So I mean, just here in like the GTA, I guess you could say, we've got like 5 or 6 UFC fighters. So I don't know why that is, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of talent. Oh, and then Siri City just got signed as well. We get to train with him a lot. He's pretty local to the Burlington, GTA area and stuff. So yeah, I think just we got good coaches here. We all work together. Like we've been, I've been sparring with, like Mike Malott and Siri and Jazz, and like we've all been working together for like, like 10 years. Whether we all meet at Parabellum or meet at Burlington Training Center or meet at Niagara Top Team or meet at House Champions. Like we're always training together, and I think that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to kind of talk about in your post-fight speech, you kind of talked about your next opponent. You chose Cub Swanson for January, if that's possible. Was that something planned if you were going to win this fight, or like did you have other opponents in mind?
No, I was definitely, since I saw Cubs fight against Hakeem Dawodo, I knew that was one I wanted to get back. It was, I enjoyed the fight. I've always liked Cubs fighting style. He's a legend. And now, I'm coming off of, beating 2, big up and coming kind of UFC, prodigies with, Blake Miller being 8-0, and then Fernando coming in on the run that he was on. I kind of think I'm ready for a little bit of a step up into, a UFC veteran or something like that. And I feel like Cub Swanson would be a great opponent. We put on an exciting fight, and I'd have a chance to get that one back for Canada.
Well, and I understand that you're looking at kind of like January. So is that telling me that you kind of want the rest of the year off, or is there some, if they gave you something that appealed to you in maybe December, would you choose that as well, or are you still stuck on January?
So I mean, I'd love to fight in December as well. Like I like fighting this, every like 3 months. But with the rumors being Toronto in January, I'd rather wait an extra month and fight at home.
Well, and you say that you like to fight every 3 months. So what's the weight cut like for you at 155?
So now that I'm going down to 145, it's when I fight more regularly, it's easier for me as opposed to like some of my fights I'd be off for like a year, and then we get like 4 or 5 weeks notice, and then I kind of had to crash down to 145. Whereas now, I mean, I'm better in my diet and my routine and stuff outside of fighting anyways. But when I fight and then I've only got like a month off to I recover, get back to normal, and then but my weight doesn't get too high or anything like that. So it's definitely easier the more active I am.
And let's say you get that fight with Cub Swanson, you beat him. Do you feel like that kind of pushes you into a top 15 position, or like a top 15 opponent, or anyone in the top 15?
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. But first we'll start with hopefully getting the Cub fight and build off of that.
And how do you feel about so there's rumors that Toronto is going to be the next pay-per-view in January. Maybe I'm not sure if that's why you wanted it, but how do you feel about that? And do you think that it's going to happen?
So I mean, like Dana, everybody's been saying they're going to come back to Toronto. I think it was just a matter of time. So I'm sure if there's an availability in Toronto, they're going to try and get back again as soon as possible. So I mean, fingers crossed. Whether it's a pay-per-view or not doesn't really matter to me. But that is kind of what I've been hearing too. Is the first pay-per-view of the year would be in Canada.
And I think the smart thing is they put you, if they can take everyone that was on the Vancouver card and just shift you right to Toronto, I think you would sell right out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Toronto. I mean, the UFC already does so well in Toronto. Anyways, I think it sells out every time, pretty much, no matter what. But yeah, I think we're starting to build some Canadian stars now, and I think Vancouver showed that. And yeah, I mean, I think it makes perfect sense to basically bring all of us back and put us on the Toronto card. I mean, most of us were from the Toronto area, anyways. So.
Of course. And another thing I wanted to bring up, congratulations on that your wife's expecting. You want to fight in January. on obviously your family's expanding here. How many fights would you like in 2024 given the circumstances?
I mean, I'd like to stay busy again if I could get, 4 fights. Fighting in January. We're due in March, so maybe take a little bit of time off there, and then look to fight in May, and then start to line them back up again.
And speaking of which, I know you're already a father. What's the biggest challenge separating yourself from being a fighter and being a family man?
I haven't found much of a problem with it. The only thing I would say is like the time that I put into fighting. Especially when I was younger, and when you're young in this sport, you have to dedicate so much time because you have to get so good at like wrestling and jiu-jitsu. There's so much to learn that you do have to dive head first into it and spend a lot of time training. Now that I've got such a solid base of skills and stuff, I'm able to spend more time with my family, and since I'm so experienced, I can kind of get to the gym, I get my workout in, get it all done, and then get back home. Whereas before it would take a little bit longer, I'd spend more time, and so now it's the work slash life family ratio is definitely a lot better for me.
Of course, I know your son's a little bit younger. Do you let him watch your fights at all?
So I will let them watch. So my one son is just turned 9, and the other one is 3. So I will, when I get back home, I'll show them usually like a highlight video or something like that. I mean, their attention span, anyways, isn't to sit there. If the fight goes to 15 minutes, they're probably gonna get bored anyways. But I'll show them like a highlight video and stuff, as long as it's not too bloody or anything that would I guess bug them. So, but yeah, so usually I'll show them the highlight video and maybe like the post fight speech or something, and then they love that.
And given the fact you're a family man, does kids give you that extra motivation when maybe the camp's getting hard, or you're in the middle of a fight and in the back of your mind, you have something bigger to fight for?
Yeah, absolutely. There's when the going gets like really tough, I don't need a lot. Like I don't need anything fancy. I don't need a big house. I don't need anything too special. So for me, it's like, oh, whatever. If I lose this fight or something, it's not gonna bug me too much. I mean, my goal is obviously to continue to climb the ranks and fight for the championship and stuff. But I do want to win these fights and make as much money as I can to give my kids, a nice house and the best life possible. So they definitely help push me to that next level where, it's no longer an option for me whether or not I'm going to, train hard, or whether I'm going to, fight to the end of, the fight, like, push myself to the limit, because I'm not doing it for myself or my own personal comfort or my own finances. I'm doing it for them.
Of course. And another thing I wanted to talk about, I don't see anything with you there. I know it's only 10 a.m., but I want to talk about Fight Camp Light Lager there. I guess I got to see a little bit of a glimpse on the All Star when you did interview with the All Star. I got a glimpse of seeing the cans. I had to look it up. I was really interested. I understand that McGregor's got his proper 12. Masvidal's got his. I think it might be whiskey. It might be whiskey. It might be, but it was some kind of alcohol. They got their own brand. So is that something that kind of helped you decide to come up with something yourself? And also on top of that, how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Connor obviously did very well with proper 12, and now Masvidal's got his own thing going, and I wanted to have, something that I can work on between fights as well. I mean, the demographic of the people that generally watch, the UFC and my fights and stuff like that, they usually like to have a beer, while they're watching the fight. So why not make it, one of my beers? So I got a hold of a local brewery in North Bay, so a little bit farther north of Huntsville, and I got talking with them, and they loved the idea as well. So we kind of went back and forth, started working on some different tastes and testing some different styles of beer and stuff, and we finally settled on this one that I really liked. It's a lighter beer, so it's not too heavy. I don't drink beer too much because I'm always training and stuff. But when I'm not training, I like to have some beer. I don't like when I get super bloated, so I wanted something that was a little bit lighter. So that's why we came up with the light beer. And then I was just in training camp. Once we did the testing and all that stuff, and then I got the fight as we started to move into production and making the label and stuff. And so we decided to go with Fight Camp Light Lager.
Excellent. And can you kind of tell the fans where you could find it?
Yeah, so you can order it online anywhere in Ontario. You can go to newontariobrewing.com and you can order it. They can ship it to your house or wherever, as long as it's inside Ontario. I believe if you order a certain amount of beer, then the shipping's free, so you don't even need to drive to the whatever the beer store or the LCBO. We are working on trying to get it into the LCBO in Ontario, but I mean, now that I'm just getting into this beer game, there's a lot of red tape and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And lastly, we spoke a while back, and you shared your thoughts about Paddy Pimblett. You said he sucked, and now they set up a fight with him and Tony Ferguson. Um, uh, as a fight fan myself, I don't see how that matchup makes a whole lot of sense with Tony being like he's like a six fight win or lose streak, and you got Patty who's on the rise. Do you like? What are your thoughts about that matchup, and what do you think that was really necessary for a fight to make?
I think it's the UFC is kind of counting out Tony. Tony was a big star. He's still got a huge name, and they're trying to build up Patty. So I think they're kind of expecting, Tony to lose to Patty, add to Patty's star power and stuff like that. But it is going to be a tougher fight for Patty. Tony's, I mean, we saw him in his last couple fights. There's still glimpses of old Tony in there. He's not. He just is, maybe his chin isn't as good, but he's still he's still got the striking. He's still got the wrestling and the scrambling and stuff like that. So I think he will definitely put on a fight against Patty, and we could see a bit of an upset. And who knows, maybe if Tony did pull this one off, maybe he'd be comfortable to retire. But I don't know if Tony's the kind of guy to ever retire. But I'm definitely pulling for Tony in this one.
I don't know. I don't know if you watched all the memes, or like you've seen all the memes that people put out, but they're like trying to say this is the Tony thing to do. He's on a six fight losing streak, and he beats Patty and he retires. That's the Tony thing. Do you think that's a strong possibility?
I think it's possible that he beats him. Again, just knowing Tony, I don't know if he'll ever retire on his own. If like Dana doesn't kind of force him out or something like that. He just seems like the kind of guy that wants to fight forever.
For sure. Well, Kyle, I don't want to take much more of your time here. I appreciate you taking the time to come on for an interview. Hopefully, you get that fight against Cub Swanson in January, and when you do, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know.
Excellent, Kyle. Well, thank you again for your time, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.